Sunrise Well, and I am here with Tansy Boggon from Joyful Eating Nutrition. She's a nutritionist and an author, so I'd like to have her on today to talk about some obviously nutrition and mindful eating and some of the topics that, well, we'll see what comes up. So welcome, Tansy.
Hi, Ruth.
How are you going?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good. I was wondering if we could start by you just introducing yourself, so like telling us a little bit about what you do and how it all came about.
So as you said, I'm a nutritionist, and I suppose I actually got into nutrition because I was really interested in our relationship to food and I suppose our eating behaviour and why we eat. I think, with nutrition, we sort of focus on the what we're eating, and I'm very passionate about why we eat and why we choose what we choose to eat, the eating behaviours that we have. So that's sort of what I've been very interested in. So I suppose I've been more focused on eating psychology than the nutrition. And so at the moment I mostly do writing. So I write a blog and write articles around our relationship to food as well as having written a book. And I provide workshops and that sort of thing. So really helping people to break free of things like emotional eating and yo-yo dieting, the stress around dieting, those sorts of things.
Yeah. And you're based in New Zealand now?
Yes.
Yeah,
been here 2 years.
Oh, wow, 2 years. Wow.
It goes fast. Yeah.
So when did this all begin? Like, was there anything at the beginning that triggered it, or was it just something that kind of slowly developed over time as you grew up, or in your, university, or?
Well, I've known you since I was in high school, so
yeah.
I think you might remember those days. I think, as a high school student, I was sort of known as someone who was healthy and very health conscious, and it was, I think at that age, it was something nearly to be proud of being healthy, and the perception that people have, when you bring a plate of fruit and nuts into a meeting or something like that, it was always like, oh, Tansy's the healthy one. And I think it can become a bit of an identity, whether it's healthy eating or unhealthy eating or a health condition, we can sort of identify with our eating, and it becomes more than something that we simply do. It becomes something more ingrained into our personality. So I think eating was always something I was interested in. I studied science and worked in the environmental science sector for many years. But over that time, there was always this dissatisfaction with my body. There was always this wanting of having my diet to be perfect and to know what the perfect diet was, and to look fit and healthy. And I suppose, we have a perception that being of a certain weight and size is healthy. And I think I sort of put that on a bit of a pedestal of trying to achieve a certain diet and trying different things to have, the perfect body. And it never happened. And I think, it's realizing that that's it in your mind. Like, what is the perfect body? What is healthy? We have this perception that it's something that we can see, and that, the way you look is a reflection of how healthy you are, when it's, not necessarily. We don't control our body and how our body responds to what we eat, and health doesn't necessarily look a specific way. But I think for many of us, we're looking for this, perfect diet to look a certain way or to feel a certain way. And I think I was hunting that for a long time, and got more and more interested in health and reading a lot. And I probably had quite a few years of trying different extreme diets, like whether it was cleansing or going gluten-free, eating raw food, trying all these different types of diets. And for years I actually taught raw food cooking classes, and I enjoy the creativity of cooking, and I still do and still do teach cooking, but I think a lot of it was coming from trying to find this perfect diet. And I think it was just sort of a moment when I realised that it wasn't healthy to constantly be hunting for the perfect diet and stressing out about what you're eating and not being able to eat in certain situations, or having to tell your family that you can't eat certain things when really you can. Like, it's just a choice that you've made and some beliefs that you've got around food. And I ended up going back to university to study nutrition because I really just wanted to know what was true. Like, there's just so much information out there.
Right.
So many people saying, do this, do that. And I started to realise that a lot of it was in my own head. What was stressing me out about food was my own thoughts and perception around food. And also how I started to realise how my body responded to food. So if I thought that gluten was going to react badly with my body, it would. And if I didn't think it would, it wouldn't. And I think, there's a lot of mental and emotional aspects that come into eating. Like, one, it affects what we choose to eat. It affects how much we eat, and it also affects how our body responds to food. So if we are feeling stressed, that can affect our food choices. It can affect the types of food that we want, but also how it feels in our body. And if we feel like a whole digestion changes, our ability. I know I've had times of stress in my life where digestion's not great, and it's the enzymes aren't being produced as efficiently, or the gastric juices. And so I started to realise that the mind has a huge role to play in things like stress, but also if we think positively about food. So if we think that a food is going to be good for us and it's going to be nourishing, more likely than not it's going to be. There was a really interesting study done. I can't remember the two nationalities. One was Thai and one was European. I think it might have been Swedish group of women, and they looked at iron absorption from meals. And when they fed the Thai women a Thai meal, they absorbed more iron than the Swedish women who were fed the same meal. And then when the Thai women were fed the Swedish meal, I can't remember if it was Swedish, but they absorbed less iron. So it actually showed that when we have a positive thought around the food that we're eating and we think that it's going to nourish us, it's more likely to. So I sort of
like the absorption of the nutrients is affected. Wow.
So absorption of nutrients, our whole digestion processes are influenced by stress, but also pleasure. Like, when we look at Italians and French, and this sort of oxymoron that we have of like how are they healthy when they're eating all this fat and meat and that sort of thing. And it's it's the joy. It's actually sitting down and enjoying food and feeling positive about the entire experience and being present with what you're doing. Like, we have a society that's very much eat on the run, eat just to fuel yourself up and to get food in there, without realizing that digestion in itself is more than just a physical process. Like, 20% of digestion actually happens in our brain, when our brain says to our body, hey, there's food coming, it's sugary food.
Get ready.
Let's get ready for that. And it's producing enzymes in the mouth, just in the salivation of thinking. Like, if there's a piece of carrot cake in front of you, your brain's telling your body that there's carrot cake coming, and it's sweet, and it's there's a bit of protein in there. And so it's actually producing the enzymes in your mouth. And that's often why we get that salivation when we think of eating carrot cake. And then the digestion's already sort of started just at that thought. And then the enzymes and the gastric juices are being released in anticipation for that food. So much of it's happening in our mind. And if we're not relaxed, or we're not aware that we're eating, so like things like reflux and certain indigestion can often be we've eaten just so fast that our body hasn't even had time to register that there's food there, and it's producing gastric juices too late. And so now there's sort of a leftover of gastric juices after the food's passed through, which now, can repeat and cause, things like reflux. So I suppose it just went as a big rabbit hole of like
so
how
interesting.
our mind impacts our body. Yeah.
Wow, and that seems like that's more where you're interested in, just trying to understand or explore, and then help other people to understand as well what might be going on with maybe some digestive issues, or maybe just the relationship between yourself and food.
Yeah, a little bit of both. I've worked with people with quite significant digestive issues who just go down the process of like trying to cut so many different things out and stressing out about, an event they might have to go to, and the stress starts to play in a really big role in that. So when we talk about things like irritable bowel syndrome and things like that, there's a huge psychological component to that. And there is debate in the scientific literature whether it's a psychological or a physiological condition.
Wow.
So, and, who knows, but it's sort of more like, let's focus on both those things at the same time, rather than stressing out about, is there gluten? Is this going to flare up? How am I going to feel after this event? But all those thoughts can exacerbate the feeling. Whereas if we take a bite of something and go, no, I'd prefer not to eat that. We're honouring our body rather than sort of getting caught up in our head that's telling us, that might have fear around the food that we're eating. So I suppose that's what led me down the path of this idea of joyful eating, which is really around, prioritising enjoyment and awareness, that we are eating, the experience of what we're eating. So it's sort of more like a mindfulness practice. And then also just the thoughts and beliefs and myths that we have around food, and how they impact what we think about food, and then how that could potentially impact our body. So if we're hearing messages from the media saying, we shouldn't be eating this, we should be eating that, and this is unhealthy, all those sorts of messages can potentially impact how our body's responding to the food that we're eating.
And that's the name of your book, right? Joyful Eating is the title of your book.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I guess this is the kind of thing that you go into in the book as well.
Yeah. Yes, it's more of a psychological philosophy around eating than actually like what to eat. I think we get so many messages of what we should or shouldn't be eating, and there's so many ways that we can eat and provide the nourishment our body needs. When you really break it down, it's like there's vitamins and minerals and essential fatty acids and protein that our body requires to function, but we can obtain it in a variety of different ways, whether we choose to be vegetarian or vegan, or we choose, not to eat a certain food group or something like that. We can still work with that to get a balanced diet. So there's not really one perfect way to eat. And interesting, like when you look at the research, it's really about sort of being more mindful of the eating, but also, eating just real whole foods, and whether we're talking about a low carb or a high carb diet, the health effects aren't really any different if we're talking about wholesome food, homemade food. So I touched on a little bit about, some of the diet myths and this idea of trying to get it perfect and getting it right, and just realising there's just not one perfect way to eat. And we can really focus on trying to find that thing to make us healthy and well, rather than acknowledging and realising that our body has some intuition in itself. And if we slow down and listen, we can determine for ourselves what our body feels good with, like how much protein gives me the energy to get through my day, how much, if I eat this, rather than sort of thinking, okay, this big piece of carrot cake is bad and I shouldn't eat it, and I'm being really naughty eating it, and if I eat this carrot cake I better not, have another dessert for the rest of the week. We're like using our mind to tell us that what we should or shouldn't be doing, rather than using our body and really feeling and experiencing that carrot cake, and focusing on this sensory experience. Are we enjoying eating it? Are we enjoying every single mouthful? Do we want to eat it all? Do we want to put a bit aside? Are we starting to feel a bit jittery from the sugars? And so we're using our body to determine how much of the carrot cake we should eat, or whether we want to be eating the carrot cake, rather than like some rules. And those rules can sort of bring us away from the sensory experience that's happening in our body, that's telling us that we're full, or that we're hungry, or actually I want something fresh and juicy right now, or it's really like tuning into our body and allowing our body to tell us what we need, rather than trying to use our mind. And unfortunately, when we eat that carrot cake and we're sort of thinking we're being bad or we're being naughty, often what comes with those thoughts is what I should or shouldn't be doing, and we end up restricting ourselves and avoiding things.
Yeah.
And then that can lead us to overeating next time, and we can sort of end up in this vicious cycle of thinking of undereating, overeating, feeling out of control with food, when a lot of that comes from diet mentality rather than within ourselves. And I think diet mentality and believing there's a right way to eat can really erode trust in our own bodies.
And it all sounds like what you're saying, very mindful, like a very mindful approach to each meal, even not just your diet in general, but every time you sit down, and have something to eat, just thinking about, is this what I need? Is this what I want? And how is this affecting me as I take it in? And how does it feel? Like, does that, it sounds to me like your approach is extremely, a very well based in self-awareness.
It's definitely a very mindfulness approach that I apply to eating. And I think, it goes into the sensory experience of the eating. And I think sometimes we reach to food, one, because there's beliefs and perceptions we have around it. Like as a society, we have food can be a way to show love and to comfort ourselves, but I think also we intuitively know that it does bring us in touch with our senses, like eating. We have the visual sensory experience, and we have the smell and the feel of the food, and the taste and the feeling of it in our body, and that warm feeling in our bellies after we've eaten a nice warm meal. And so I think we know how that pleasurable feeling, but also the sensory experience that we get from food, that brings us into the moment. It brings us into our bodies and out of our head. And I think we sort of intuitively know that, but often we sort of grab food because we want that comfort and that feeling, but then we just eat it without being mindful that we're eating, like aware that I am eating. And so especially if we're feeling stressed or emotional or anxious, and we might reach for food to sort of calm ourselves down. But if we're eating that food on the run, or while we're on our phone, or while we're still in that sort of stressed out state, our body's not really registering that food's coming. It's not providing what we're after with the food. Whereas if we actually stop and sit with the food and eat it in a more mindful, considered way, really experiencing it, it can be a calming, mindful practice. In the same way that we'd be meditating. It's like I'm meditating on food right now. What am I doing right now? All I'm doing is eating, and all of my attention is on eating. And even you don't even necessarily have to have any thoughts about whether it's good or bad, or if it's going to nourish you or not. It's just right now I'm eating, and this is a way for me to tune in and to tune out from all that outside noise, the stress of the situation that I'm in, or the things that I have to do, or what I should or shouldn't have done in the past. And right now I'm eating, and right now I'm providing nourishment to my body, and I can, feel I don't know, the crack of nuts between my teeth, and I can feel my jaw moving. And so we're like focusing on all of those sort of sensory experiences that are happening, and bring our attention into the activity that's happening right now. So it's sort of like a mindful experience. And I think in that way we get what we sometimes want from food, which is that comfort, that emotional soothing. And unfortunately, the way we use food, often we don't get that, or it's so momentary. And, you know, before we know it, we've eaten a whole container of ice cream or something like that, thinking we're going to get some comfort, and we come to the end of it and we feel, you know, gross and heavy and like we've overeaten and ill because we just didn't enjoy the experience.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you if you had any tips, but you basically laid it out. Like, you know, if someone wanted to sort of start this or bring a more mindful and joyful way of eating into their lives, it would really just be that focus, like just tuning out the rest of the world and really bringing their attention into the meal and the process of eating the meal. Is that sort of the main crux of what you would suggest for people to really get out of that sort of crazy headspace when they're eating and into the more embodied, intuitive way of bringing their food into the body?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's pretty much the fundamentals of what joyful eating. And it seems, in one respect, it seems quite easy, but I think in practice it's quite hard.
It's that decision, isn't it? It's like it's making that decision before and saying like, okay, this is the meal. I'm going to tune all this out. I'm going to turn off my phone or put my phone away and, you know, get the world a little bit further away from me and just, it's almost like you said, like it's almost like it's about making that decision, which a lot of the time we don't do.
Yeah, because I think if we like, say we've got a busy day at work and we've got even a 15-minute lunch break that we've given ourselves, like often we might like eat at our desk and we eat, you know, we just think it's just fuel that I'm stuffing in there. Whereas that 15 minutes can be like a mindful break of, you know, I can't work now, I've got a fork in my hand, you know, I may as well just stop working and trying to or pretending to or attempting to and just 100% focus on this one task. Because then often when we get to the task, get back to work, we can now bring that focus attention to the next activity. And obviously that's, you know, what mindfulness is all about. But yeah, we're mindful with the eating, whether, you know, even if it's a meal a week or a meal a day, and then bring that forward into the other aspects of our day, and it can really increase you know, productivity and focus in other things as well. I think so yeah, in one respect it can seem quite easy, and that, I suppose, that mindfulness is pretty much sort of the number one, and then behind that comes more awareness of the thoughts. You know, I'm trying to eat, but this thought keeps coming in my mind that you know, that I shouldn't be eating this, or I should have ordered the salad instead of the meat pie. You know, like those sorts of things. And so we're becoming aware of these things and not seeing them with you know, judgment, and trying to change, you know, what's occurring right now. It's like, okay, I've ordered the meat pie, I'm eating the meat pie. How do I feel eating this? And you know, whether it's in the moment or it might be later, like really exploring the behaviours and the beliefs that come behind that. And it may be as simple as like, why did I choose meat pie? You know, it's just normal habit that I have. I may have got as equal pleasure out of something else, or there may be something else behind that, like an emotion that I actually wanted to order the meat pie because I'm feeling down about my day. I'm feeling like I'm not being respected at work, for example, and grandma respects me and grandma makes me meat pies, and I actually wanted that feeling. And so there might be a lot more to it, and I go through this a lot more in the book, and for some people they may need to see a therapist or counsellor that specialises in the sort of, you know, emotional aspects, because we can start to realise that there's other things going on
Right.
there, but I'm actually looking for something else. I'm not, yes, I'm eating a meat pie, and if we just look at it on the surface and go, okay, I shouldn't eat meat pies, there's not enough nutrition there, it's not that healthy, it's high in fat, we use all those reasons not to eat meat pie, but we've actually ignored the deep reasons that might be going on there if we sort of cover it up with all these rules.
Yeah. Wow.
Rather than realizing, okay, I was actually looking for something else. I was looking for, I wanted a voice in that meeting that I just had, and I didn't feel like I had a voice. And now I've gone for a cupcake, and it's not about the cupcake, eating that cupcake being bad. It's more about, why do I not feel like I was heard? How could I feel heard in the future? What could have I done or said? Or so it's sort of, there's a lot more that comes into that, but it's like food becomes like a little window into deeper emotions and beliefs that we have as well. So I think we do it from a very young age. We use food to comfort children and things like that. So there's a lot more emotion and beliefs that come into food. So mindfulness is sort of like the number one, because we need to bring this to the surface. We need to sort of see this,
be aware,
and observe it, like with curiosity, like this outside observer of like, oh, that's really interesting that I have that cupcake every time I have that meeting, or whatever it might be.
What the connection is.
Yeah, I always feel like I need sugar after I meet with him. And so you're sort of understanding or a little bit more of what's going on there without trying to change it, just exploring it with sort of, I suppose, curiosity.
Yeah, wow. This is so fascinating. Like, I feel like there's just so much to talk about with this. I didn't even realize how, I guess, in the world that I'm in, I'm more in the mindfulness and stress and all of that sort of things. And I do look at food, but I'm not a nutritionist, so I don't dive into it that much. But the psychology behind it, there's just so much. It's incredible. And the connection with emotions and stress and awareness, and then the background, like you said, the thought patterns and the language inside your head, and where did that come from, and maybe challenging some of those beliefs and things. It's so fascinating. I really wish we had more time to talk. I feel like I want to schedule another video date so that we could keep going, maybe in the future, because I would love to do this again. I think we've just touched the surface today. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just the awareness for people to have that there's more to it. I think we just think of food as something we need to control and contain and figure out, rather than seeing it as a lot deeper than that, that it shows us so much of who we are and how we deal with things in life. And it's something that we can explore much deeper than we've been led to believe. When we go have diets online and stuff like that, to say, oh, just eat this, just eat my diet plan and everything will be right. And we know that doesn't really work, because there's so much more to it than just do this.
It's awesome. I'll be linking to some of your articles and your book and your website. I don't know what else, anything else that you want me to pass on. I'll link it all under when I post the video. So if anyone's keen to find out more, I'm sure you've got some really great things to read up on it. And I would love to thank you for coming on and having this chat with me. And
thank you.
Yeah, it's been great to touch base again.
Yeah, and I think I think people just don't realise the relationship between food and mindfulness and meditation. I think for me, I find meditation and relaxation techniques nearly one of the first points of call with eating issues, because as I said, stress and emotions plays a huge role in our eating, and so that becomes a really important part of the journey. And I think we just focus on the food without realizing that there's a lot more that we need to work on, and other ways to care for ourselves and to quieten the mind and that chatter as well. So
it's really something to dive into. I hope that we can talk again.
Yeah, we'll do. Well, good luck with everything, and lovely to connect again.
Yeah, thank you. I'll see you later.
Okay, see ya. Bye.